Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome to episode 3 and our continued look at some gameplay from the Chase of the Bismarck from Vuca Simulations. In our last episode, the Prince of Hood, the Wales, and some British destroyers squared off against the Prinz Eugen and the Bismarck. By the end of the episode, both the Prinz Eugen and the British destroyers had been sunk, leaving a damaged Hood and the Prince of Wales squaring off against the Bismarck. However, lurking on the horizon is the King George V, which could play a factor in this battle. Let's jump right back in and keep going with our epic confrontation of dreadnoughts. To set the scene, our battle is occurring here to the southeast of Iceland on the 22nd of May 1941. The Prinz Eugen and the Bismarck sailed from the east to confront the Prince of Wales and the Hood and its assorted destroyers, and the surface battle began. In our last episode, the destroyer flotilla was sunk by the Prinz Eugen, and the Prince of Wales and the Hood battered the Prinz Eugen, sending it below the waves. What we're left with right now is this scene right here. The Bismarck to the east firing across this, and again, this is connected here to up here, firing this way at both the Hood and the Prince of Wales. And let's take a look at the condition of our ships. The Bismarck has some minor damage from an air attack that occurred earlier in the day, but it suffered no damage so far in the battle, as both the Hood and the Prince of Wales opted to punish the Prinz Eugen instead. Likewise, the Prince of Wales is undamaged. It does have its unreliable primary armament, however, which has been a factor reducing its effective firepower in the battle so far. The Hood, however, is a little different story. The Bismarck found the range in the last round, punishing the Hood on the hull, reducing it by quite a bit. Primary armament damaged, secondary armament destroyed, and it's also destroyed its radar, weakening the Hood's effectiveness to dial in and effectively hit the Bismarck. The wild card off on the horizon, however, is the King George with its light cruiser Kenya, Aurora, and a flotilla of destroyers closing fast and trying to engage on the battle. If they can make it in time, it could change the entire nature of what's going on. Thinking strategy from the British perspective, I think we want the Prince of Wales and the Hood to open up, of course, on its only target, the Bismarck. Hope it can punish it and reduce it to the point where it can't flee, and hope that the Hood doesn't get sunk before that happens. And if the King George can show up, then it could be time to really deal some payback on the Bismarck. From the German perspective, this is it. They've got the Bismarck, they've got the Hood dialed in. Let's punish the Hood, hopefully put it under the waves, and then see if we can get out of here before the King George shows up. Now, this is our third round of naval combat, our third round of surface combat, and each round starts again with torpedo attacks, but none of the ships in the current engagement have torpedoes. Both the Prinz Eugen and the destroyer flotilla, which had torpedoes, have all been sunk, so we skip that stage. Let's go to our second stage, which is very simply, it's time to open fire. Attackers go first, although all firing is considered simultaneous. So we're going to have the Prince of Wales and the Hood open up on the Bismarck. Let's start with the Prince of Wales. Because its side is facing the Bismarck, it can use its primary armament on the bow and stern. 9 plus 5 is 14. However, it does have an unreliable primary armament, which means we have to roll this die to see the factors are cut in half. We get a 0, so it isn't. So luckily, it'll be able to bring its full firepower factors against the Bismarck. So 9 plus 5 is 14 factors. Now, it's at long range, because it's a range of 5 sea zones across here. So we cut that in half, down to 7.5. We round up, however, to 8. So we get 8 shots here. Now, the modifiers on this one are because the ship has radar, -1, and then the visibility, which is a 4 plus 1. So that rounds out to a 0. Let's take our first 4 shots and see how we do. Low numbers are good. Those are pretty bad numbers, actually. We got a 9, an 8, and an 8, and a 2. We know the 9s and the 8s, and the 8 is going to miss. The 2 is definitely going to hit. We have to roll 4 more. We'll remember that, too. This one a little bit more effective. So we've got a 0, a 4, a 4, and an 8. I'll calculate the damage on these, and I'll calculate what's hit, and then we'll take a look at the result on the Bismarck. So the 2 4s hit the primary armament on the bow of the Bismarck, reducing that by 1 each. And we'll take those off now. That's going to be a factor. Oops, we need to use the red ones because it's happened in this round. So drop those in place. All right. And the 2, however, is the deadly special damage. So we roll on the special damage table. The deadly 0. No! Okay, so on this one here, it's sunk if the die roll is equal or lower 10. Otherwise, 3 hull and evasion. So this is a brutal hit on the Bismarck. If we roll a 0, the Bismarck has been sunk. It's like that's kind of simulates that magazine critical hit. A 6. So it ends up being 3 hull and an evasion marker. We have to pull the evasion marker for the Bismarck. Let's see what we get here for that. Just -1. And we'll put that on here, reducing its evasion to 27. But we also get 3 hull hits here on the Bismarck. So that's going to reduce it down to a hull capacity of 8. So it's down by about 33% right now there. So the Bismarck takes a beating, and we still have the hood to fire. So the hood gets to fire. Now its bow armament is down to a 6. Its stern armament is at a 7. We cut those in half. The 13 is a 6.5. Rounded up, it's a 7. The die roll modifier is +1 because its radar is broken. So we'll take 4 shots here. Get a 0, a 2, a 6, and a 5. The 5 hits, and so we'll take the 6 off. We'll remember the 0, the 2, and the 5, and we'll roll the other 3 shots here. The 0 is deadly there. A 1, a 6, and a 5. The 6 is going to miss. The 1 and the 5 hits. So 5 hits, 5 brutal hits by the hood on the Bismarck. Let's calculate the damage there. The 2 5s, we add 1 to those, making it a 6, which are both hits on the secondary armament. It's already reduced to 1, however, so it's going to go down to 0, and that will end it for the Bismarck. None of those extra hits are carried over. Our number 2 rounds up to a 3, the +1 modifier, and that converts to a hull hit, meaning that the Bismarck is down to a hull strength of 7, suffering 4 hits here. However, more precariously, our 0 and our 1 both convert to special hits. So we'll roll 2 dice for the special damage table and see what happens to that. Oh my goodness! The hood is dialed in the Bismarck. Both of them are 0s. If they're going to convert at least 3 hull hits plus evasion. The hood with punishing fire. Double goose eggs. That's an incredible roll. If we get a 0, it hits the magazine and the Bismarck has exploded. We get a 7 and a 4. So both of those are 3 hull hits plus evasion. Not looking good for the Bismarck though, because 3 hull hits here. That's 2, 3, and 3 more, reducing it to a hull capacity of 1. And we draw an evasion marker, which is going to make it even worse for the Bismarck. We get a -3, reducing its evasion down to 24. The hood and the Prince of Wales putting some devastating shots on the Bismarck. 3 special hit damage rolls really turned the tide here. The Bismarck, however, gets to fire at the hood, so it's not quite over yet. So the Bismarck primary armament down to 7, stern armament at an 8, because again, this combat is simultaneous. So 15 cut in half is 7.5, rounded up is 8 shots. At long range here, the die roll modifier is even because the radar is damaged, so it loses, it doesn't have the radar. Its target is acquired, so it's -1, but the visibility is +1, making these straight up rolls. We'll do 2 rounds of 4 here. Now it's firing at the hood. Gets a 3, a 4, a 1, and a 5. That's all 3 of those. All 4 of those are going to be hits. So we'll jot those down, and then we'll make the second round of firing here. That's some pretty effective fire by the Bismarck. Round 2, we get a 0, a 9, a 7, and a 5. So the 7 misses, the 9 misses, but the 0 and the 5 hits. 6 hits by the Bismarck. Both sides here putting on some pretty punishing damage on this combat here. Let's calculate the damage on the hood. So calculating the damage here, the 3 takes a hit on the hull, reducing it to a capacity of 4. The 4 hits the primary armament, reducing that to a capacity of 5. The 5 hits the primary armament on the stern, reducing that to a capacity of 6. The 0 is 2 hull hits plus an evasion, reducing its capacity to a 2. You take an evasion hit, oh, a deadly -10. Oh, so the hood listing, say, imaginarily to port here with a heavy list and an impeded movement here. And we still have the 1 to roll, which is a special hit. So we have to roll the 1 on the special hit table. This could be particularly nasty. A 1 is 3 hull hits plus an evasion. That takes it down to a 1, a 0, and more. Let's draw the evasion chit just for fun. A -3. So the hood, the Bismarck punishes the hood, and it starts to capsize almost immediately after just a battering round of naval surface combat here. Let's take a look at what things look. Let's continue on. That's the end of the surface firing, but boy, what a mess we've caused. Before we do that, though, we need to drop down our acquisition markers. Both the Prince of Wales and the Hood have acquired the Bismarck. We will drop those down on the Bismarck as well. So the Bismarck has been acquired, although the Hood's going to vanish pretty shortly here because it sank. So now we go to the torpedo hit determination phase. There are none because there are no torpedoes here. Now we go to the movement portion. That's pretty easy for the Hood. It sinks, so we can remove it from the battle, and that is gone, giving the Germans quite a significant victory point tally there. Now the question is, what do we want to do with the Prince of Wales and the Bismarck? Prince of Wales and the British are in an excellent position here because they could have the King George and the second task force show up very momentarily here, and the Prince of Wales is undamaged. The Bismarck has 1 meager hull hit left. Now, we could try to close with the Prince of Wales, but if the Bismarck tries to run, we're still going to be in long range at this rate. And it's not going to be able to disengage because it's got so much reduced evasion, unless the Prince of Wales takes a lot of damage now. We're just going to have the Prince of Wales sit and keep firing at the Bismarck. For the Bismarck, with the devastating pounding it took from the Hood, its fate is pretty much sealed. With a hull capacity of 1 and an evasion that's lower than the Prince of Wales, it's not going to be able to evade the Prince of Wales forever. I think its only hope is to take the Prince of Wales to the bottom of the ocean with it. So with some stoic bravery, the Bismarck is going to hold its ground and bring to bear all of its primary weapons upon the Prince of Wales to hope somehow miraculously take the Prince of Wales with it. That brings us to the end of the movement phase. Now we go to the abort combat phase. No ship is far enough away to do that. You have to have an increased range than what the Bismarck has right now. So it's stuck here, and that's kind of part of its reason why it doesn't make sense to run. It's not going to be able to get away. So now we go to the reinforcement phase, and let's see if the Kenya, King George, and Aurora with some destroyers show up here. So now we see if the King George and its accompanying ships arrive. I'm not 100% sure we do this as an entire task force. The rules seem to indicate it's per ship, but the combat player aid seems to indicate the task force would be considered 1 ship. I think it makes sense to do it as a task force, so we'll do it that way. We need a 4 or less for all of these ships to arrive. We get a 5. They do not show up. So the Prince of Wales is still left on its own, with the King of George steaming to get close, but not quite making it yet. The last thing that we need to do is to make this damage permanent on the Bismarck. So we're going to remove all of the red markers, put them down on 1. I'll do that off camera here, and then we will reset for the next round. So here is the battered state of the Bismarck with a mere 1 hull point of strength left. Listing to starboard by 12 degrees, slowed down. The Bismarck still, however, has a good majority of its firing capacity here. So let's go to the next round and see if the Prince of Wales can finish off the Bismarck, and will the Bismarck, with its still quite powerful firepower here, perhaps be able to do some significant enough damage to the Prince of Wales to take it down together with it. Our 2 ships face off across the Atlantic here. There's no torpedoes, so we go right to firing. Attacker goes first, so the Prince of Wales is going to open up, although again, this is considered to be simultaneous. So perhaps of utmost importance to the Prince of Wales is whether its unreliable primary armament actually does its job. On a roll of 0 to 4, we have full gun factors. We get a 5. It's reduced by half. So we go 9 plus 5 is 14. Cut in half is 7. Rounded up is 8. However, we cut that in half again down to 4. So its firing effectiveness reduced by 1/4 here. This actually gives the Bismarck some hope because, I mean, well, we'll see what happens. 4 shots. Gets an 8, an 8, and a 7. And the 4 is the only thing that hits. Let's figure out its modifier. Is there hope for the Bismarck? So the lone hit by the Prince of Wales, which was a 4, because the Prince of Wales has radar and it had acquired the target, the die roll modifier was a -1. The only thing influencing it to the negative was the visibility, which creates a +1. So 4 - 1 reduces to a 3, and the 3 is a hull hit. So the sole hit that the Prince of Wales was able to bring to bear on the Bismarck hit the one spot that it needed to, and the Bismarck starts to slide under the waves. However, this epic story isn't done yet because the Bismarck still relatively, and I mean, this is a really odd return in that the hull has been battered really badly, and yet its primary armaments are still in relatively good shape. So it's going down guns firing. The Bismarck opens fire. It gets a 5 plus an 8 is a 13. Now at long distance, it's cut in half to a 6.5, which rounds up to 7. And that's what it's got. So let's take a look. We got 7 shots here with the Bismarck on the Prince of Wales. And these 7 shots are at 0 modifier. Get a 0, a 2, a 7, and a 9. So the 7 and the 9 miss, but the 0 and the 2 hit. 3 more shots from the Bismarck here. A 0, a 2, and a 5. Ooh. So the 5, all 3 of these hit. Once again, the Bismarck putting on a pretty impressive firing display as it's starting to slide beneath the waves here. So the 5 is a hit on the primary armament in the stern. These 0s are 2 hull hits plus an evasion shit. So we're gonna drop 1 here. I'll get these in place and be right back. So those are the hull hits on the Prince of Wales. We now have to drop 2 evasion markers. Oh, a rather punishing -5 and a -1. The Bismarck putting a hit on the Prince of Wales, and it's not done yet because the 2 2s with no die roll modifiers are both special damage. And we have rolled, I feel like the dice have really brought up some 0s here. 0s could be particularly deadly for the Prince of Wales. Let's see what we get here. We get a 4 and a 7. The 4 does 1 hull hit plus evasion. The 7 does a hull hit and a radar damage. So the Prince of Wales, it will survive. Its radar gets damaged, however. Its hull hit is battered again, and it's going to take another evasion hit here. So we will draw that, and it is a -2. So the Prince of Wales takes a battering from the Bismarck. However, it's 1 shot on the Bismarck amazingly hit the hull, and that's what's going to decide this battle here. The firing round comes to conclusion. The Prince of Wales is smoking and fired wreck here, still, however, maneuvering under its own power. The Bismarck, however, as we come to the movement phase, slides beneath the waves, and its day has ended heroically, taking out the hood and almost taking out the Prince of Wales, but it just needed that little bit more. The Prince of Wales and the hood saved the day by sinking both the Bismarck and the Prinz Eugen, and that brings our surface combat round to a close. Now, with the Bismarck sunk and the Prinz Eugen and the Bismarck's task force removed from the game, the Bismarck sinking actually triggers an automatic end to the game and an allied operational victory. So that would bring this game to an end. And this gives you an idea, I think, of that. You know, the game box talks about a 2 to 6 hour gameplay range. And so it can end on the first turn. A number of unfortunate things happened here to kind of force the Germans' hand. First of all, it was the absolute best weather you could hope for on the afternoon of May 22nd, which meant that pretty much everything got spotted, and the Bismarck and the Prinz Eugen were like kind of ducks in a barrel. Now, also, I mentioned in the last episode that I had accidentally not seen the errata that changed the rules about the automatic spotting, kind of the random spotting of German tankers. So that, I think, that's actually has a big impact on gameplay, because that kind of forced the Germans' hand. It's like, yeah, we we can't really make it farther out into the convoy lanes and try to sink the German ships and the convoys out here because the tankers are getting spotted. And if we continued, they would have lost a second and a third tanker already, with a fourth being barreled down on right up here to the northwest. So this tanker wasn't going to be very long, leaving the Germans really at the end of the first day. The only tanker that would have been kind of capable of helping them is out here. So that really kind of put the Germans in a tough strait. So I really like that change to the random spotting rule, that it doesn't include tankers, if only for gameplay sake, because that makes the capacity of the Bismarck and the Prinz Eugen and German ships to kind of run this gauntlet, if you would, here of British search and try to get out into these convoy lanes and do damage. Because once that happens, the game's going to play a lot longer. It's a lot more cat and mouse, and the Germans, I think, can really kind of wreak some havoc out here in the shipping lanes. The last thing I would say about this, just as commentary as we finish up, the game is designed, I think, kind of as an operational level game, and the tactical level elements of this game are intentionally simplified. There are some designer notes in the manual talking about Vuca Simulations potentially building a tactical level naval combat game to go along with this one. So when you got to a situation like we had with the Prince of Wales and the Hood versus the Bismarck and the Prinz Eugen, you could fight that out using the tactical game if you want to, because I think you'll note that, the tactical combat level, it's granular and a lot goes on, but it's simplified a lot to kind of keep things moving along. Likewise, air attacks, submarine in convoy attacks, and everything like that. That really has to be streamlined to a certain degree to keep this game from being kind of a 20 or 30 hour game. So that's a factor to keep in mind here. Although I really like the simplicity. There's enough strategy and enough going on in that tactical level combat, especially with the surface combat, that I really have enjoyed playing that. And with that, we will bring this playthrough to a close. I will possibly come back in the future and just make a very short video talking about my thoughts on playing this solitaire, because it was quite a bit more fun and executable than I imagined it to be for a double-blind game. So I'll probably just make a separate video about that as we go forward. I'll put some links up here to other videos if you want to keep watching stuff. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let me know what you think. And again, last thing I will say too, if I were playing this competitively, I don't know if I would have had the Bismarck run at the Prince of Wales and the Hood. That seemed like, that probably wasn't the best strategy. I was more doing it to kind of show gameplay than I was to say, this is the right thing to do. With that being said, let's wrap this one up. Thanks everybody for watching. Take care. Bye.